And we found out on a very short notice, so I came up with this idea to organize a round table around services. And the idea that inspired me was when I completed a sales module in Kyiv Mohila school. So one day we dedicated fully to the concept of services. So we defined it not as product quality, but as an additional value. So quality of product is clear. So I suggest we talk about it. Let me present myself. My name is Kraineva. I'm head of project management department in Intex Translation Company. Today we invited some experts. They will set the tone, and I'll set it a little bit too. So please let me present our guests. Please, Iurii. So, Iurii Tsvierkun, head of the Profpreklad translation company, Hans Fenstermacher, operations director of the United Language Group, Stefan Grosu, strategic development manager, and Olga Chaevskaya, staff consultant. I have some slides with minimal amount of text. They will set the tone of our round table. And the first question I'm going to ask, I'd like us to identify what is not good service. For example, when you deliver service order on time, is that service? My answer is no. This is a certain operational standards. What are the ideas about what is not service? I think when we address special requirements of a client, so when he says, do a translation in blue font, that's not service too. Please voice all your commentaries on the mic, otherwise online participants would not hear us. We have some attendees who would give you the microphone, so please.
I will speak in English just to give some practice to the interpreters. Yes. But maybe this is a language question, but when you say service or service, you know, what does that mean? In other words, I guess we're trying to understand what the definition of that is. But what I hear so far is that service is something that goes above and beyond the requirements of a particular client or project. So anything that meets requirements is not service, but something that goes above and beyond is service. Is that is that approximately correct? Well, no, I'm okay. For example, but if a client comes and says, I would like 50,000 words translated into 20 languages. It's now 4:37 in the afternoon. I need it at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And I only have scanned documents. That's their requirement, right? So if I meet that requirement, am I performing according to an operational standard requirement, or am I in fact creating what we would call service? Is that a real service at that point? In other words, is there such a thing where client requirements are so high or so specific or so difficult that meeting them is in fact already a very high quality service?
In my opinion, service is something that adds value to the product. Mm-hmm. So if your example shows that if you meet the client's requirement, if you help him when he is in need, So you provide service, you provide emotional addition to your product. And if you are able to deliver a good quality product, it's even better.
What do you think?
Well, if I have to speak regarding the service, I will be speaking from the point of view of an LSP, of a language service provider. When it comes to a service, I will have to really stick with something that I really heard at a previous conference, was that as an LSP, if your end client, so for example, let's take Microsoft, if Microsoft gets a hold of the list of your linguists and can manage with just that, then what you are providing is not a service. Of course, it's like the envelope switchers, like someone said previously. Yes. Providing a service is more like providing project management, in my opinion. When it comes to translation industry, when you have to translate a project, actually changing the words from English into the target language or from the source language to the target language, that would be the minimum requirement. You have to go up above and beyond, offering project management skills. That's my input.
But
Мы продолжаем, да? Давайте.
So we're continuing. We keep switching from language to language. In my view, both Stefan and Hans are absolutely right. That is something that we give beyond the standard set of services. But what is it exactly? Do we communicate with clients so that he says, oh, I absolutely love you. I look up to you. I'll be working with Oksana, project manager, and only her, not Ola's or other girl, because I like specifically Oksana as project manager. So in my view, giving services for client is exceeding the client's expectations. So when he thinks that that his project will be done on time, in my view, this is when we added an extra goodie apart from translation. That could be a smile or any additional services, or as Kirill Bayakin was telling us, that the in-text company sends not only the translation, but also a checklist after QA. Am I right? Well, they say a QA report, the checklist, that these checks have been carried out. And she also gives an opportunity to evaluate the level of services so that the client might see what has been done and evaluate this work. So, to my mind, if QA report has not been demanded by client, but you nevertheless added it, so you expressed care for the client, so service, you did this. Look, you received not only translation that passes your requirement, we also did this thing for you. So that's service, in my view. What are any other components of service? Apart from the emotion, what might also feed into the concept of service? In our case, quite often, this is enhancement of the original. So if you point out, okay, here's a mistake in the source text. So do you mean to say if a client sends a document? So the customer sent me a document on the transformator analysis system, and we translate it, and then we point out that this link or this reference to point 543, but the real reference is to the point 541. So in the measurements here we have kilovolts, but in the actual fact, taking into account the right units, there should be megavolts, for example. Or for example, in here we're not sure. Look it up, check it out, check your documentation. Usually the customers think very, very highly of it. In this case, if we have many of these tiny nuances, sometimes you want to charge extra for it because you do spend time on it, don't you? What do you do in this case? So we don't check it separately. So if the customer did not ask to check the original, but if we found it out in due course of our work, so basically there are no extra expenses incurred by this, so therefore we wouldn't charge anything extra for it. So your question is, should we plan and include in the cost this extra service? The issue is whether you want an extra service as a standard you give more than your competitors give, or is this your individual wish? So you're so kind and generous, you found a mistake on the reference and you pointed out to the client, well, I don't think you could charge for it. On the other hand, we invest finances in our staff training for them to communicate with the clients correctly, and we waste the manager's time so that he would check how the staff communicates. So this is included in the costs, obviously. You're very cunning, very subtle. Okay, if I wasted 5 hours working time of a manager, I am paying his salary. It is included anyway in my expenses. So if there's any additional service, if it is standard, so obviously it's included in the cost. It just doesn't stand a separate line on the bill. What can we do in case we cannot provide a high-quality product and service? We didn't manage to provide it. What are the options? What do we do when the client's expectations have not been met?
I think this goes back to the first question. We're talking about setting expectations on the part of the client and our own teams, and those must meet. So your question is, what happens when they don't meet? And the problem there is that the correct expectation setting at the beginning was not done. So the client expected a certain thing, your team expected to produce a certain thing, but those two things were different. So then the question becomes, why did that happen? And that's probably a question of, can be training, it can be a question of workflow, it can be a question of talking more with the client, and so forth. So I think it's a little simple to just say, if I produce more than the client expected, then that's service. I think you also have to talk about how do we communicate at the beginning with clients about what the expectation is. Because the expectation, by the way, can also be low. The client can say, I only want a quick, basic translation. I don't want editing. I don't want, I just need to know, I need this level of quality. I don't need this level of quality. I don't want to pay for that. So if your team produces this level, but the client is paying for this level, there's a problem. And that's not service for the customer, to give them this level of high quality if they don't want to pay for it, don't want it necessarily. So I think it's very important to talk more about matching expectations between customers and our own, teams, than to, there's no absolute standard for service, I think.
I hope I understood the question correctly. I would like to speak on another perspective. You said what happens when you don't deliver the promised quality, or when the quality hasn't been matched. I was looking to speak a little bit about having a small failure in projects. We always tend to be too optimistic when it comes to this. I'm going to speak from let's say, I will take a personal example from last week. We, as we discussed with the customer, we did not set expectation when it came to communication. So the issue was late communication. How do you deal with failing an expectation of the client? I think what we realized after a few trial and errors is that after you failed at first is if you own up to it or not. If you blame it on some external issue for not having time, couldn't do the delivery in time, my phone was dead, so you couldn't call me, I did not check my emails, and so on. If you say, okay, I understand the communication was bad from my part, it doesn't matter if you did your part or not, I am assuming my part. This is my plan. So this is why what I was talking about. Delivering the service, in my opinion, is not only owning up to it. It's okay to own up to it, but to have a solution. You own up to your mistakes, and you instantly come back with a solution. At first, it might not be the best, but you work together with your client to find the final solution.
И как показывает практика,
So the practice shows. So if there was some sort of blunder, if you slip up, if you react very quickly onto it, if we communicate correct, if we adjust the work, and so quite often we can gain extra trust. So the client, where everything is, who is very stable, he receives everything, all he relies on, and that is basically it. But if there was a failure, the tasks of a translation company is to react promptly and react in such a way so as to show the partner, you can rely on us. Even if something goes wrong, we'll make every effort, and at this moment it doesn't matter what it costs and whether this order would be profitably. Our task is to live up to the client's expectations. So in this case, when we do our utmost effort, usually the client becomes even more loyal, even though not always.
And I have another question
Идентифицировать.
to this. How can you identify those who can properly answer to, in the first place, vendor managers and project managers and client managers? What should you consider to make sure that a person will meet your expectations as a client with regard to the service? And I would like to address this question to the personnel managers. Thank you. It's a very big question, and you can divide it into several parts. So who should we look for? And how can you govern this process and guide it? So I'll start with the first one. How can you identify it? What personal qualities should be looked on? In my view, there are several blocks of personal qualities which make sure that a manager is successful in bringing services, in having it in his or her blood. I will use an HR slang for this. There is a positive reflex for a person, and we can know when we meet such a person very well. So first it's the smile that we see, mimical smile, an open position, posture, an open look, a desire to communicate, to say something, to say hello, to make a contact. And I have a good example in this regard. When our personnel manager makes an interview in the interrogation room, and I know that the person who is interviewed will be a part of my section, we have the following deal with the personnel manager, that the person is sitting back to me, and I come in unexpectedly and I will ask this person, is it going to take long here? And we'll see what kind of reaction the person will be. And it's an experimental one, but I think it became very interesting. First of all, there is no reaction at all. So the person is sitting with his or her back to me and goes on sitting like that. The second reaction is as follows. The person turns around, looks who came in and continues writing. And the third type of reaction, the person turns around and says hello. We made up our mind that the third reaction is is the one is a servicing one. So it's a real life example, which it's an experiment which has been put into practice. Yes, of course, there are people who are ready to be the first without any invitation to make contact, and they are potentially very successful in providing services. It's a very high level of communicative skills, and in the first place, the need for communication, I mean the personal need for communication, and such quality of as diplomacy. It's a very interesting communicative block. They are not born diplomats, they become ones. So it gives us a lot of room for creation in teaching people. And it's very important for a person to have a desire to communicate a lot. And if a person lacks this personal quality or lacks energy for the implementation of such activity as communication, the manager will be leading the person to that algorithm which is not servicing per se, which does not provide servicing, as I would put it. As far as diplomatic skills are concerned, the skills of interpreting or translating the same thought in different languages, for different contexts and situations, for different people, is both a talent and an art, but they become good diplomats by practice. Practice makes perfect. And mastery of a skill is given to you when you put something into this, put some effort into this. And for managers who have that gap, and it is a basic, it means the speaking and understanding, thinking, and it's a very interesting question. It's a very interesting peculiarity and feature in the structure of intellect. There is a block like this. It's speaking and understanding notions, thinking. People who have readiness for that, and they are working in the system of signs, for example, notes for musicians and those who work with digits and figures. And for them, signs are also a leading system. They are not person of speech. They are not working in speaking. And there are people who are most successful in providing information through schemes. And some people find it easier for them to communicate through techniques. And there are very interesting people for whom the most important system of conveying information from themselves and to themselves is a word, language, tongue. So we're interested in these types of people in the context of our business, and a certain level of development of such skills, and they should be found even during the interview when the candidate is just entering the company, and then we can go on with managing this person and giving instruction to them, and we will understand whether he will be good in understanding our client's need. And if speaking is not the main channel of conveying information, it would be very difficult for the person to understand many things. And I have a question for your very wordy characteristics of professional qualities of a manager. This readiness to contact, be the first to contact. Don't we change notions here? Whether we are discussing a sales manager or a client manager here, I think you put these two functions together, and today in big countries, in any industry, and we know that there are sales managers and custom support and client managers too. So from my experience of working in as an assistant in selecting personnel, we had different criteria for choosing the customer or client manager. So what you say here is closer to the characteristics of a client manager.
On my side, I'd like to add that yes, there are sales managers who sell at first, but the project managers actually sells it forward on. So if we've delivered the first order and it's been executed by sales managers, and let's say something went wrong and the customer isn't happy, he would not return to us. So basically, any further sales is manager's responsibility. So this is one of the sales option, but it's a more complicated kind of sales. There are multiple steps to it. Any deal, any kind of deal, well, they differ from one another, and the number of these steps differs as well. So in this kind of services, then it is the number of steps that defines the type. There are more of those steps and they're more complicated.
I wanted to add a little thing myself. Sales is actually the thing that I do daily, and if I need to go to sales and to fight for new clients, I really need to know that the project managers have my back. So I really appreciate what you said regarding the project managers, because they have to sell it as well. For example, I bring a client into the company, and only together with our project managers can I expand our business with the certain client. Because from my part, I can only draw the attention of the client. After drawing the attention together with the project manager, I can keep his interest. That's my input.
Можно я дополню?
Let me add as well, please. I totally agree with you, because my posts is a combination of salesperson and a project manager. So, for example, when we have a new customer coming in, it is I who get in touch with him. I sell our services to him, and I can give any consultation on what are errors in the file, as Vladimir was talking about it. I can tell him what is the best process to receive quality product. So as soon as we receive first order, as soon as you attended to client in all the ways you could and he really liked it, and then it's the project manager takes over, you really want the project manager to continue the same course, to be very attentive, to walk very smoothly, to approach them very smoothly. Lots of girls work in our company, so I'd compare them to the smoothness of the cats. But
that it's asking a great deal of a single person or a single position to be a salesperson and a project manager, and sort of a customer support. That's a lot of things to do all together in one. And in my experience, project managers who are good at project management are typically very good at project management and not so good at what I would call further sales. Now, we may be talking about two different things. There is such a thing as an account manager, which in my opinion is somebody more who manages the relationship with the client, but doesn't necessarily work on project steps day to day. So maybe we're talking about two different things. But I think the ability to sell is a very different skill from the ability to manage projects well and serve a customer well. Though there is a bit of sales in that, yes. You're because you're representing to the outside. You're talking to someone outside your organization. But truly being able to sell, to me, is a completely separate skill from being able to understand the client and service that client on a day-to-day basis. It's very hard to find people who can do both of those really well, in my opinion.
Я поддерживаю Ханса, но
I agree with Hans, but in the actual life we have to sell. Today I took pictures with the rake, and I invited you to come tomorrow to my presentation on how not to step on a rake, e.g. how to not make mistakes. So we have a client who comes in and he asks, can you translate 30 pages of scanned documents till tomorrow morning? A bad PM would say, oh, no, we cannot do this. A good PM would say, yes, we can do it, but by Monday. He refused as well, but he refused in a selling manner. Yes, we're coming back to the issue, but this is not the same that the dividing line of sales and project manager. It's all about diplomacy. If you have a small bureau, okay, you can combine these functions in one person. So both approaches are okay to exist. In a small company, there could be one person dealing with both tasks. But in big companies, why they create separate departments? Because sales sell. We're not talking about unifying these things in one person. I fully support Hans that sales is a separate skill, project management is different skills, and services require the third skill. But you need certain communication skills that would enable them to sell. Of course, they need them. But what has been said at the beginning, it was more of a descriptions of a salesperson. This is why I asked and streamed the discussion in this direction. Thank you very much. I can only add that we've taken 5 minutes off our coffee pause and it's time to wrap it up. So would Stefan please quickly make some conclusions so as not to keep you?
What I was going to say would be the conclusion of the sales part of the conference. I read a quote on LinkedIn, and I think it was Elon Musk that said it. Not the whole company is the sales department, but every employee must. No, it was like not employee works in sales, but the whole company needs to be the sales department. In the conclusion is that everyone in the company represents the company, but not everyone in the company works in sales. To conclude with.
И последний слайд от меня — это лайфхак от...
Slide from me is a certain life hack. Iurii wants to say something, but I'll be first, so I'd like to share a life hack with you. So we're talking about secret services. What is it? Services that would enhance the emotional side of client. The client is going to be on number 9. So you have a new tab on your CRM, or just you can use some pieces of papers or whatever. When the mentioner is talking to a client, you get up interesting facts that the client is unawarely tells them. My dog is called Drozhok. My wife's birthday is in spring and she adores roses. You write all that down. You note it somewhere where people can process this data, and later on they create some nice surprises. So, for example, when it's client's birthday, you'll give a wreath that he particularly likes, and he has no idea how you found out. So, as we talk to client, we're interested in, oh, how's your dog Drozhok doing? And the client is emotionally overwhelmed. If somebody asked me about my dog, I'd talk for hours and hours, and I'd feel really, really good. So the emotional component is enhanced. So this is a secret service. Aren't people afraid of these surprises? Aren't people scared? So we're talking about translation, and then you go, how's your dog doing? Well, I haven't talked to you about dog. Well, we were watching you. Have you actually put it into practice? Have you checked how it works? Because in my view, this is ambiguous. So it can be a trap for client. So on this note, well, they really recommended it, and we're trying to use it not so up front, but we try to memorize it. Somebody is a fan of football. We have a a customer who's keen on football, we congratulate him when his favorite team wins, and he's so happy about it. Iurii wants to give the word. I'd like to say a few words about client services, because our company works for domestic level. We deal with this very much. The Soviet heritage in our country, service is very poor. And the problem is, not everyone knows what a good service is. Frankly speaking, not all our employees can afford to go abroad and experience this service. Maybe they don't go to luxurious restaurants or expensive to understand the services beyond McDonald's. So we teach them, we train people how. For example, we record phone calls that the manager can listen to so as to give feedback to the employee on when he was wrong, when he conveyed information in the wrong way, where he said no, apart from saying, it did not say, yeah, we can do it, but on Monday. We evaluate our communications, our email. I've acted as a mysterious customer, secret customer. So we went and ordered translation in other companies. Unfortunately, the Ukrainian service is very low. It concerns live communication. So if you have a client who comes up with a translated document, it also concerns telephone communication. And the best is, of course, email communication. If you're bored, you can apply or you can send an order in Ukrainian translation companies. Hello, please translate my contract into English. The reply you could possibly get would be 200 hryvnias. That's it. I didn't shorten it. That is all, virtually all you get as a reply. Ruslan replying to you, saying that you reply as a professional because we've sent this query to you as well. I'd like to say, when we work with end customers, client service is of crucial importance. And I wish that you develop this sphere, because by doing so, you're receiving extra opportunities for your business. Thank you. On this positive note, let me conclude.